Heritage Equip came about because of the changes to the Building Act, which kicked in middle of last year. Obviously, the impact of the need to upgrade earthquake-prone buildings potentially impacts on heritage buildings to a greater extent, because quite often with heritage buildings, of course, it's more difficult to demolish. So the remedy that the Building Act requires for earthquake-prone buildings, remediation, is essentially upgrade or demolish. And obviously from a heritage perspective, and Waimaru, less demolition is a very good thing. So Heritage Equip comprises two sides of a coin. There's the funding side and the information side, and I very much encourage you to have a look at heritageequip.govt.nz. That's the website which has, if you're new to an upgrade process, whether it be a seismic upgrade, if you're new to an upgrade process and you haven't thought about the process before, if you're absolutely stumped as to what it might mean, we try and guide you through that process on the website. So the website's available to all and anybody to have a look at as a means of kind of demystifying that upgrade process. But of course, the majority of people who are visiting our website are doing so because there's some funding on offer. So that's what the front of our website looks like roughly now. It's really easy to navigate, so the headings at the top, I strongly suggest that you have a look when you've got some time. Top right are some case studies. There are a good few which might twig some ideas for you in how you consider a potential upgrade for your building. But under the funding your project, you'll see some Heritage Equip, some effectively profiles of projects that we have funded. By way of example, this is probably the best and most relevant example for an Oamaru audience. This is, as it says on the box, the lovely Huranui Hotel, which as a younger chap I used to enjoy the hospitality of on occasion. In its heyday, it looked like kind of top left. Well, actually, that's wrong. Relatively recently, it looked like top left. Its heyday was possibly in the 20s. But following the Christchurch earthquakes, there was a bit of damage. But when the Kaikoura earthquakes happened, the building was closed, and that red sticker was put on it under the Building Act. Dangerous buildings, and Lou, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't an earthquake-prone buildings provision that red sticker went on the building. It was because it was a dangerous building following the Kaikoura earthquake. So the tenant vacated, and the building was effectively left derelict. Initial engineering advice for the building suggested that, as again Lou has suggested, that a substantial amount of steel framing would be required to remediate the building. And steel framing in a space that kind of looks like top right was, problematic to say the least. Also problematic was the initial estimate at about $1.2 million for an upgrade program, and you can imagine what sort of 1,000 rooms and a couple of bars and a restaurant might do at $1.2 million. Is almost a laughable proposition. So the owners managed to get, with some help from Heritage New Zealand, a different funding pool that they managed to get some support from. They were able to get some engineering advice that effectively better reflected the inherent strength that is in a stone structure, along the lines of what Lou has said. So the bottom left picture is a fair bit of damage to a gable end, and you can see the next picture in to the right is where the gable ends have been pulled back for reconstruction. The structure itself was substantial. It was two layers of locally milled stone, and it was softish stone, kind of like Oamaru stone, the same type of sandstone. And the remedial process itself, again, as Lou alerted to, it involved, you can see the patras plates that are on the gable wall end, or the wall end that you can see there toward the bottom right, where the floor and the ceiling better tied to the wall of the building to provide better protection against the deformation which happens out of plane loading on those walls. There's another example just up on T Street where a slightly more obtrusive solution is being put in place. But those patras plates are what you'll quite often see, those plates that are effectively the outside bolts of a reconnected floor or ceiling structure inside. And bottom right is the happy story where these guys are the new occupiers and the new business owners of this building. They bought the land and buildings and are running a hospitality business out. The final cost came in at around about 450, 500,000, the final upgrade cost. So obviously radically different from 1.2 million. Specifically for funding, um, this is a very broad picture of what we've got available. We have advice grants available, professional advice, so it's for the likes of engineering advice, for the likes of conservation architecture or architectural rendering, that any kind of advice that is likely to get you closer to a building consent, to having a building consent approved. Now, there's a big red cross beside Oamaru there. That is because the professional advice grants are available only in high and medium seismic risk areas, which does bring Kurau into play. However, we are a fund that is set up for privately owned buildings that are earthquake prone, that have heritage recognition. So in terms of the upgrade works grants, that's once the consent is in place, or at least once you have your design to a stage that the consent is ready to be lodged, or the consent application is ready to be lodged. Those projects we can look at applications for. So yeah, as I say, there's one exercise in T Street which is being implemented now. They got just under 50,000 in funding from us. There's a funding cap of 400k per building. Most of our funding awards are in that 150 to 300k range. The higher the heritage value of your building and the closest resemblance of best practice from a conservation architecture and engineering perspective, the better funding outcome will be. So we're trying to reward good projects. A plan for your building. There's a whole lot to build on that Oamaru does really, really well, and I guess the bottom half of the page are, I guess, the plans that council and various civic organisations are putting in place and have established already to advance Waitaki and to advance Te Oamaru as a destination, effectively to bring more people. And I think that if you've not done so already, as an individual building owner, you need to come up with a plan for your building that can leverage some of the activity that's happening on a broader community scale. You can inherently see yourself as part of these plans and participate in the public processes that these plans inherently have associated with them. And if you do nothing else, at least advocate for, in your community, at least advocate for things that will bring more people, more visitors, and more users of buildings to the middle of Oamaru and Kurau.